Hi, welcome to Reddit Audio Stories official channel. We hope you will have fun with us. I appreciate your visit to my channel dedicated to love stories. I encourage you to subscribe and give it a thumbs up as it serves as great motivation for me to create new content. Enjoy watching. Thomas and Scarlett Garcia. A couple married for 12 years, spent an hour and a half in their first court-ordered three-way therapy session. Lee attended only at the insistence of his attorney Poston. Nuptial agreements were a relatively new phenomenon in the legal system, and Lime's lawyer wanted all the I's dotted. The previous 90 minutes had been spent in conversation between the lawyer and Scarlett, and Lime remained seated, tight-lipped with a notepad and pen. Periodically, he would jot something down on the pad. Scarlett, please touch the heart of tough counselor Eleanor, who was also impressed by the way Scarlett accepted all the blame, dispelling any fears Lime had that his infidelity meant Head had failed her in some way. Scarlett had also avoided many of the bullshit excuses that people in her situation inevitably come up with. Eleanor was glad that Scarlett had followed this approach since she had been the one who had recommended it when they had met for the alone session 3 days earlier. Finally, Scarlett fell silent. The only sounds in the room were the faint ticking of the analog clock on the wall beside her and the scratching of Lie making notes in a notebook on his knee. Let the silence linger. Experience had taught her that most people in uncomfortable situations like to fill the pauses. 1 minute 2. Eleanor looked at Scarlett, who opened her mouth as if she was about to say something. Shook her head slightly. Scarlett heeded the subtle signal and closed her mouth. Eleanor decided to give Lime 1 more minute if he remained silent. Eleanor was going to suggest to Thomas that he seriously considered what his genuinely remorseful wife was going through and initiate him into the general statistics. Far from once a cheater, always a cheater, those who were caught cheating and witnessed the devastation cheating caused to those they cared about often became incredibly loyal. She waited, Ly shifted, and a faint smile crept across his face. Good, Eleanor thought, and the corners of her lips turned up in a howlfile. It was usually better to get the aggrieved party to contribute voluntarily than to force it by force. Good for you, Scarlett. I give you a 9 out of 10 for that. Saw's smile disappeared. She was embarrassed, and judging by Scarlett's expression, so was she. Eleanor came to her senses first. Now, Mr. Garcia, there's no need to be rude. Your wife has exposed her most intimate parts here. As you note, I met with her privately earlier this week and she is truly humiliated that I caught her doing this and very devastated by the pain it has caused her. As she said today, her coworker was an experienced Lahario and she was not strong enough to resist his advances. I can assure you that with both of our blessings, if you forgive her, I will be able to work with her to give her enough strength and knowledge to make sure this doesn't happen again. Thomas just sighed. They say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. I don't get the hint. Mr. Garcia, are you saying that your wife can't learn to protect herself and therefore protect her feelings in the future? No, not at all. Mrs. Roberts. I was referring to how long you've been in college. 4 years, 6. Actually, I finished my master's degree 6 years, yes, and you've obviously learned a great deal. He offended Eleanor, straightened up, sorry. Mr. Garcia, that was rude and totally inappropriate. Do you think? Avoiding further protests. Thomas pulled an electronic device from his pocket and pressed a button. Scarlett's voice came out of the device, apologizing. She swore it a bit a one-time mistake and that Thomas could take it to the vac. They listened as she admitted how much she'd hurt him and how hurt she was that she'd had caused him so much pain that she had witnessed. Just then Sarah's indignant voice interrupted loudly. He realized how disgusting and inappropriate it is to record our session. Not only is it disgusting, but I believe it is completely illegal in this state to record someone without their approval and consent, and I certainly have no intention of agreeing to it. That's okay. Because Madison agreed. Eleanor was too angry and embarrassed to realize that Scarlett had just dropped her chin to her chest and was successfully mimicking a beat. Sa couldn't remember when she'd been most offended. Who the hell was Madison? She was our counselor 2 years ago. When I last caught Scarlett cheating, it was on the record. Then my wife's a convincing bitch. Isn't she? She cheated on me? Then that's for sure. Scarlett continued to stare at the ground at her feet. Lie watched with satisfaction as he and Eleanor engaged in a silent competition to see who brushed. The most irritated Eleanor reflected on the thoroughness with which she had been tricked by the experienced cheater. Perhaps her embarrassment was alleviated by the realization that the reason Scarlett was such a convincing liar was because the first person she had convinced with her nonsense was Scarlett herself. Thomas took advantage of the embarrassed silence of both women to put an end to this charade for the avoidance of doubt. Scarlett, I will abide in full by the terms of the marriage agreement you signed 2 years ago, and that means leaving my house with only your personal belongings and leaving behind all the jewelry I bought for you, including the 2 rings you are now wearing." Thomas paused, allowing himself to repeat his previous sentence with satisfaction in a way. "I suppose I should thank you if I had divorced you 2 years ago. The courts would have given you half of everything. Now you get nothing, and the only cost was that I had to swallow my pride for a while. Don't worry, you didn't hurt me this time. Despite what a good counselor might say deep down. I think I knew you would cheat on me again, and that's why I never got emotionally involved in our relationship again." Scarlett was silent, staring at the floor. She had not yet realized the depth of the punishment and the loss. Eleanor, embarrassed by her naivete, shuddered at the cold impassivity with which Lai behaved. Apparently, he was actually as emotionally unflappable as he claimed to be, or else he was an even better actor than his wife. Neither woman said a word, and the aggrieved husband continued. "Give me 24 hours and I'll put your shit in a box. I don't know where you'll go or what you'll do, but frankly, I don't care. The locks will be changed in an hour, so please don't embarrass both of us by banging on the door. If you try to mobilize your family and our friends against me, the videos I have of you and your lover will mysteriously end up in the possession of everyone you know. And I mean everyone. I'm sure at least some of them won't be so sympathetic when they hear how you squealed when Noah pinned you down. Once the divorce is final, we can talk about your visit to Mary. Sign a divorce this week and I'll be generous with a visit. If you resist, you'll only get to kiss her goodbye." Eleanor's ears pricked up at those words. Scarlett raised her head and her eyes flashed with a mixture of fear and anger. Neither reaction went unnoticed by Eleanor. Neither in her solo session nor in this joint session had Scarlett mentioned her daughter, but then she seemed like a typical 21st century narcissist, as self-centered as a spinner, so obsessed with what she could lose that she shut out everything and everyone else. Eleanor looked back and saw the pain on Scarlett's face as she finally found the words. "But you can't take my little girl away from me. She needs me. I can't live without her." The unbearable pain. Scarlett felt that the words of her assumed-to-be ex-husband was reflected in the contorted features of her face. Eleanor thought if these idiots would think of all the consequences of their actions before committing their various crimes, I would be out of a job. She reached out and placed her hand on Scarlett's arm, hoping to prevent Scarlett from suffering a total collapse. After revealing himself as an emotional dead fish in the eyes of the counselor, Liam spoke with complete calm. "Maybe you should have thought about this before letting yourself be seduced by an expert. Everything is clearly spelled out in the contract. It says, if you screw up again, you lose everything, including custody of Mary, but she needs me." "Bullshit, Scarlett, she's 10 years old. I'll do as well as you anyway. This is not the place to air our dirty laundry. You cheated on me. I took you back. You signed a contract after the wedding and promised not to stray again. I suspected something was wrong, investigated and caught you fooling around again. Don't commit a crime. If you can't face the consequences, isn't that what they say?" Thomas stood up and looked at his soon-to-be ex-wife, who was now kneeling on the floor with her hands folded in supplication and tears in her eyes. The agonized expression on her face showed everyone present that perhaps for the first time in this whole sordid affair, she felt remorse. The consequences of his impulsive actions were finally becoming apparent. Gathering her last bit of strength, Scarlett broke into a run. "You will not take my Mary. I will fight you every step of the way." The counselor helplessly witnessed the smile that appeared on Lime's face. "Please do, bus coda. My lawyer has told me it's an ironclad agreement and will give me the excuse I need to post my little videos. Try appearing in public after they come out." Scarlett Eleanor looked at the devastated woman and sighed. She had better get started now if she wanted to avoid a total mental breakdown, especially if the aforementioned contract after the wedding held in her husband's favor. Having a daughter taken away from you must be every mother's nightmare. She leaned toward the sobbing woman as Theo Ly Garcia sat in his car until the adrenaline subsided and his breathing returned to normal. Then he drove home past the grocery store and liquor store, buying a bottle of bourbon for himself and a nice piece of fish for dinner for him, and Mary salmon was his favorite. Tonight was the beginning of a new stage of their life together. What he did tonight was important. He paused with his hand on the front door handle, determined to stick to his normal routine as much as possible for Mary's sake, pushing open the door. Lion Garcia spoke loudly, aware that Mary's hearing was diminishing. Mary Bark, the elderly terrier dog, jumped out of her basket and, wagging her tail so hard that her hind legs slipped on the floorboards, came over to greet her master. "Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put likes, share with friends and subscribe to the channel.